Hey guys, tonight we plunge headfirst into the primordial void where nothing yet is, but you stand on the brink of everything. Imagine the hush before a grand fireworks show, only infinitely darker, quieter, and humming with potential. You probably won't survive this tidy glimpse of cosmic chaos, but don't worry, it's purely metaphorical. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're at it, post your location and local time in the comments so we can see who's joining this late-night myth marathon. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wander across a silent expanse where earth and sky have not yet shaken hands, an eerie chessboard of swirling mist and latent force. From that void, Gaia emerges, the personification of Earth itself, her shoulders broad and fertile, her hair laced with the scent of dark loam and fresh rain. Historians still argue whether she was envisioned first as a mother figure or an elemental terrain. But mainstream sources agree she anchors all life. Mainstream fact. Above her hovers Uranus, the starry sky, whose starlight glimmers like scattered gemstones on obsidian cloth. Their union is equal parts tender and terrifying, like watching a druid hug a thundercloud. From their union spring the Titans, firstborn gods of monumental stature, with sinews like braided oak and voices that rumbled like distant thunder. There's Oceanus, god of the encircling river, whose cool waters were thought to bound the known world beneath his ripple. Ancient mariners swore currents could pull a small ship down to the underworld itself. Then there's Hyperion, whose eyes shone like twin suns, a fringe detail some sources credit with creating Dawn's palette all by himself, though modern scholars debate whether that was a later embellishment by Orphic poets rather than Hesiod's original lineup. Scholarly debate. You pause to breathe in the scent of possibility, a heady mix of rain-soaked soil and faint ozone. Like the air just before a thunderstorm, the ground beneath you vibrates as if warning you that familial tensions run deep in mythic lineages. Sure enough, Gaia grows restless under Uranus's icy dominance. His children, she complains in whispers that echo through mountain caverns, are imprisoned within her very flesh. It's a striking image. Divine womb and prison at once. You crack a joke. Guess family therapy wasn't invented yet. Before realizing in mythic terms that would have required first inventing couches. Second joke of the night, Gaia hatches a plan with Cronus, her youngest child. Arm him with a sickle forged from adamant, the mythical metal so hard even Ares' sword would dull against it. In a midnight ambush beneath a sky dripping starlight, Cronus slices Uranus's genitals, casting them into the sea. From that crimson foam arises Aphrodite, though she's better known for emerging near Cyprus later, proving that messy breakups can spawn beauty. Quirky tidbit. Fish swish through scarlet-stained waves, and the air tastes of salt and something sweet, like blood mingled with honey. Scholars still argue whether this violent birth signifies a ritual echo of ancient castration rites or is purely symbolic storytelling. Scholarly debate. You might shiver, but it's not just the damp breeze from your window. It's the thrill of witnessing primal violence that reshapes everything. The main narrative then shifts. Titans rule unchecked, sprawled across sky and sea, until whispers of rebellion grow loud enough to summon a new contender, Cronus himself, crowned king of a world built on his mother's scheming. His reign kicks off the mythic equivalent of, you break it, you buy it. Except Cronus seems to think he owns the cosmos outright. We pause for sensory detail. Imagine the crackle of lightning illuminating an obsidian horizon, the electric tang tickling your nostrils. Lightning didn't just glow in the sky. It was Zeus's branding iron. Later, but here, its raw potential. You tease. Hope you've got insurance for that lightning bolt. Landing your third joke for the section. That humor hangs as lightly as dust motes in a sunbeam. Yes, dust motes, because even primordial myths needed a cozy atmosphere transition. Then comes the Orphic wrinkle. Phanes, a radiant being encased in an egg of swirling silver and gold, hatches to become a cosmic pioneer, scattering seeds of life across an inert void. This detail doesn't show up in every schoolroom textbook, but reminds you mythic storytelling was never monolithic. Some traditions elevate Phanes as the first cause, outshining Gaia herself, a fringe variation that pits poet against poet in debates about original mythic hierarchy. Scholarly debate. As your mind sketches constellations overhead, you sense Gaia and Uranus's children, Titans, Giants, and Erinyes, lurking like spectators at the world's first amphitheater. Imagine rows of monstrous silhouettes, knotted arms crossed, waiting to see if this new order will stick. You drop another light jab. Good thing they don't sell popcorn in the underworld. Brief laughter crackles before fading, a reminder that these epics mix brutality and whimsy with reckless expertise. By now, you're halfway through a story older than any nation-state, tracing echoes of these cosmic events in every mountain range and every storm that rattles your window. The earth under your fingertips, your mattress or blanket, feels like Gaia's gentle pulse, a comforting but paradoxically profound connection to those ancient stirrings. It's as though every breath you take is a whisper from millennia past, a reminder that today's calm sleep owes itself to yesterday's divine commotion. And as you steel yourself for what comes next, the rise of Cronus's children, the Olympians, remember the sublime absurdity. Without that messy primordial drama, you wouldn't have epic poetry, statues, or bedtime stories that both soothe and thrill. This is where sleep-friendly history finds its paradoxical sweet spot. Intense cosmic violence and gentle whispers in the same breath. You settle deeper into your pillow, a smile creeping onto your face, ready to drift further into myth. You blink and find yourself amid a forest of giants, limbs knotted like ancient yews, their voices rolling through the air like distant thunder. Titans loom all around you, each one a walking mountain crowned with storm clouds or flowering vines. Oceanus stands to your left, his beard dripping with river foam, the very source of the world's encircling waters. Historians still argue whether his domain was meant to represent a physical river around the earth or a cosmic boundary. Scholarly debate. To your right, Coeus tilts his head toward the stars, and you can almost taste the cool salt of starlight on your tongue. This is the era when the Titans reign supreme, long before Olympus glitters on the horizon. You trudge forward, the ground trembling beneath every Titan footstep. Their rule is thunderous, yet strangely ordered. Atlas bears the weight of the sky on his shoulders, as if performing the cosmos's most exhausting shoulder press. A mainstream fact you've heard since grade school. His muscles ripple under a layer of cosmic dust, and sweat beads on his brow like dew in a moonlit glade. You might joke. Okay, Atlas, maybe try doing squats next time, as your first quip of the section, lightening the mood amid mythical muscle worship. Behind Atlas, Prometheus shades his eyes to scan the horizon, curiosity flickering in his amber gaze. He's the schemer, the Titan who sees the value of intelligence over brute strength. He whispers to himself about fire, though not the fiery arrows of war. You lean in, catching the faint scent of smoke that isn't there yet, like smelling pizza before delivery arrives. Quirky tidbit. Fire in myth becomes a symbol of divine knowledge, but right now it's just a spark in Prometheus's mind. Historians still argue whether Prometheus was originally a culture hero or a later poetic invention designed to humanize the Titans. Scholarly debate. You step between two colossal legs and catch the roar of Tethys calling to her siblings, her voice soft as sea spray, yet powerful enough to stir storm clouds. Her laughter tinkles like shells underfoot. reminding you of distant beaches and childhood walks, collecting driftwood. Then Hyperion flashes overhead in his golden chariot, a fringe detail some traditions credit him with painting the sky each dawn, though mainstream accounts assign that task to Eos, goddess of the dawn. Historians still argue which tradition came first, scholarly debate. The morning sky you see outside your window might owe its pink and orange hues to these very arguments. Further along, you stumble upon Crius, who seems to have invented the first ancient rake, sweeping cosmic debris from the world's edge. You picture a divine gardener tidying galaxy clusters, a humorous image that prompts your second joke. Even the universe gets messy sometimes. You shiver as you imagine star clusters drifting like leaves in autumn. Yet the scene relaxes you in its absurdity. The sensory detail of rustling cosmic leaves mingles with the earthy scent of pine, an unexpected pairing that tickles your senses. Rhea emerges, regal and magnetic, her presence like a warm hearth glow. She hears the rumble of children's giggles from deep within the earth, Demas, Phanes, and younger gods you haven't met yet. Her smile is comforting, like wrapping yourself in a Sherpa blanket. And yet, she carries a wary edge, as if expecting betrayal. You note a quirky detail in some odd local cult. She was worshipped under the name Cybele alongside Phrygian mountain gods, a reminder that myths were as many as the villages that told them. Historians still argue whether Greek mythologists borrowed her from Anatolian deities, or she originated in their own backyards. Scholarly debate. Brontes, Steropes, and Argus, the Cyclopes, forge thunderbolts in a hidden cavern. Their hammers ring against anvils made of fallen stars, each strike echoing like cannon fire. You feel vibrations underfoot, and the metallic tang of ozone fills your nose. You can't help but grin. Your third joke ready? DIY Thunderbolt kit. No assembly required. This makes you wonder how many mortals would pay for that on Etsy if it existed. As you wander deeper, the air grows thick with potential. The Titans govern the cosmos with elemental fervor: earth, sea, sky, time, and memory. Their rule is stable enough that mortals could roam a world with seasons, rivers, and nights punctuated by stars. Yet you sense a tension under the surface, like a kettle about to whistle. Cronus sits upon a throne carved from petrified starlight, patting the armrest and humming in contentment. He takes the promise of power too seriously, convinced that only absolute control can prevent chaos. But that conviction is a rotten seed in fertile soil. You brush a hand along a moss-covered pillar where Mnemosyne once whispered secrets into the wind. Memory itself feels tangible here, like tracing your finger over a carved relief. She hums an old lullaby in a language half-remembered by time. The fragrance of memory drifts in on her breath, honeyed thyme and wintergreen. It feels strangely comforting, as if you could gather memories like flowers in a spring bouquet. Kronos glances your way, eyes narrowed like storm clouds on the horizon. You tread carefully, aware that a single misstep could shatter the fragile balance of Titan kingship. His laughter rumbles through the clearing, a sound like shifting tectonic plates. You murmur, "Tiptoe, friend, tiptoe," to keep from drawing his attention, though whether the joke is yours or his is hard to say in this realm of giants. The Titan's reign is both majestic and oppressive, a paradox that tingles at your skin. You feel goosebumps, not of fear, but of awe, as if you're witnessing the grandest symphony ever composed but played by conductors twice your height. Sensory detail floods in. The tang of salt from Oceanus, the warm glow from Hyperion, the metallic hiss of thunder from the Cyclopes, the earthy hum from Gaia herself resonating through the ground. Each sense blends into a tapestry that feels both alien and oddly like home. And then you sense it, a shift in the air, subtle as a bird's wing stirring a still pond. The youngest Titans exchange glances, their breath visible in the cooling air of approaching twilight. You know this calm will not last. A new generation stirs beyond the horizon, eager to claim their place under the sun. The seeds of rebellion have been sown, and soon the Titans will face the forces they once enslaved. You swallow, tasting the metallic tang of anticipation, and brace yourself for the thunderous conflict to come. By the time you glance upward, stars are twinkling into view, as if the sky itself prepares for a different cast of gods. Your heart pounds with excitement and a hint of dread, yet you feel strangely comforted. This world may tremble, but its foundations lie in these very cataclysmic origins. You settle into that paradox, letting the rhythms of myth lull you toward the next chapter, ready to drift deeper into legends as old as starlight. You blink again, and now the air feels charged with whispering winds and furtive footsteps. Cronus, idol of the Titans, rules from a throne of petrified star metal, but his paranoia festers like an untended wound. You trudge across a valley strewn with basalt columns, ancient columns so regular they look engineered, only to find your path barred by a river of molten rock. It's a danger you'd expect from a volcano, not a god's fear of prophecy. Mainstream sources agree that Cronus swallowed each child at birth, convinced of an oracle's warning that one would overthrow him. Mainstream fact. You shiver, but it isn't the heat. It's the cold logic of a divine parent who literally eats his offspring. Step lightly, because Rhea, Cronus's queen and mother of the swallowed gods, is about to enact the franchise's first great rescue mission. You spot her approaching, robes trailing like dawn's first rays, clutching a wrapped bundle. The aroma of fresh figs and honey drips from her presence. Curious in a molten rock valley, quirky tidbit, she hisses to you, "Help me distract him," as if you're a co-conspirator in this twisted bedtime story. You raise an eyebrow, wondering how often mortal bystanders get enlisted in cosmic kidnappings. But before you answer, she's slipped into Cronus's chambers. From a slit between storm-burnished gates, you spy Rhea presenting Cronus with a stone swaddled in cloth. The king's greed blinds him. He gulps it down as though it were ambrosia, and the bundle's deceptive weight rattles his sternum with a hollow thunk. You can't help but quip, "Guess even gods can't resist a good gift wrap," which echoes faintly off magma-carved pillars. Your first joke of the section. His grin is smug, but you know this trick won't pan out forever. Meanwhile, Rhea hustles baby Zeus to a cave beneath Mount Ida, nestled in Crete's secret groves. You follow on silent limbs, ears ringing with the distant roar of ocean waves. In that verdant cleft, nymphs rush forward, their laughter tinkling through olive branches. Curiously, one holds a bronze drum, beating steady rhythms meant to muffle infant cries. Another fringe detail that historians still debate whether it's purely ritualistic or originally designed for real-world soundproofing. Scholarly debate. The beats blend with the drip of a hidden spring, creating a lullaby so hypnotic you almost drift into slumber yourself. The cave is scented with goat's milk and thyme, warm and pungent, like a shepherd's hearth. Amalthea, the divine goat nurse, dips her teat into a bronze pail, producing milk sweeter than any modern confection. You taste the air, and it feels creamy, like sniffing a fresh bakery before sunrise. These nymphs, Lasthina, Adrastea, and Idea, take turns rocking the swaddled godchild, their wings rustling like worn parchment. He stumbles, clutching his midsection, unaware that every swallow tightens the bonds of his undoing. You observe him pacing marble halls lit by flaming braziers, and the hair on your arms stands up as if anticipating a thunderbolt. It's a reminder that power built on lies, even divine lies, tastes bitter at first light. In Crete's moonlit reaches, the infant Zeus thrashes in slumber, his small hands twitching like constellations rearranging themselves. You reach out, half expecting static sparks, but instead feel a gentle warmth, a divine pulse. It hums through your fingertips, lighting up dark veins like golden rivers. This moment feels intimate, almost too sacred, like glimpsing your favorite author's private journal. You swallow, buoyed by awe and slightly guilty for intruding on sacred space. Time bends as you drift from that cave to a high bluff overlooking the Aegean. In the blackness below, tiny fishing boats bob like dragonflies on obsidian water. Lightning crackles in your vision, and you quip. Note to self, never play catch with a toddler Zeus. Your third joke slipping out. Each thunderclap pulses with cosmic potential, like a drumroll heralding a new act. And indeed, Zeus's destiny coils within him like a serpent ready to strike. From his hiding place, he plots with Metis, the titaness of wisdom, weaving cunning schemes. They share riddles in hushed tones, smoke curling from incense bowls scented with laurel and myrrh. You inhale and taste resin on your tongue, a biting sweetness that lingers. Back in Cronus's palace, the final straw arrives. Hera, Hestia, Demeter, Hades, and Poseidon burst forth from his belly after Zeus administers an emetic potion, another quirky twist that feels both culinary and divine. You can practically hear the belches echoing down marble corridors. Mortals would find it rude, but in myth, it's poetic justice. With a final echoing roar, Zeus's lightning scythes through the sky, marking the end of an era. The cosmos holds its breath. Your moment to drift into slumber arrives on the wings of that celestial crescendo. You blink and suddenly find yourself amid crackling storm clouds, poised on the precipice of a new era. Zeus, now full-grown and bristling with divine confidence, stands atop Mount Lycaon, robes whipping in the gale. You trudge forward through a tempest of swirling gray, where each breath tastes of ozone and promise. Mainstream sources tell us Zeus seized the sky in a cataclysmic contest with the Titans, wielding thunderbolts forged by Cyclopes in hidden forges beneath Etna. Mainstream fact. Here, the air is alive with electricity. Each inhalation crackles like static against wet hair. As you approach, Zeus hefts a freshly honed thunderbolt, shimmering with bluish-white arcs that dance like restless spiders. You can almost hear the hum of raw power, a high-pitched whine undercut by distant rumbles. Quirky local legends claim Zeus once tested his thunderbolt on a clump of cauliflower, reducing it to ash but leaving a perfect imprint of florets on the ground. Proof, some say, that even gods appreciated a good veggie joke. Quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether such stories arose to humanize deities or simply amused audiences at symposiums. Scholarly debate. The first bolt flies into the sky, splitting a cloud with a roar like dual cannons firing in perfect unison. You feel the vibration under your feet, as if the world itself is tapping a drumbeat to herald a new ruler. You crack a joke. Zeus's Wi-Fi signal must be amazing up here. Your first quip of the section, landing with a grin despite the storm's fury. Lightning streaks overhead, illuminating the jagged peaks around you in flickering silver. Below, the Titans muster their strength against the intruders. Atlas grunts as he shifts his sky-bearing burden, eyebrows furrowed in concentration. You dodge a sudden blast of wind that carries the tang of salt, Poseidon's domain encroaching even on the sky. Below, the sea roils as Tritons blow conch shell horns, their notes warbling like ancient bugles. You lean over a cloud bank and spy frothing waves chopping against hidden reefs. The scent of brine mixes with ozone, and you nearly drop your water bottle, except you're aware in myth you'd better not be carrying one. You grin and quip your third joke. Guess I'll stick to bottled water next time. Zeus's voice booms above the roar, crisp and commanding. He rallies the Olympians, Hera balancing on a bolt like a tightrope walker, Athena's owl flitting through the storm, Ares brandishing a spear alight with static sparks. Each deity moves with purpose, embodying aspects of the natural world they command. As they align, You sense the atmosphere shift, a change from chaos to orchestrated power. Thunder becomes a chorus, lightning a staccato melody. The Titans push back, but their momentum falters. Cronus unleashes a roar that shakes loose small hailstones, pelting you with chilly stabs. You grit your teeth, the cold biting through your layers. Elsewhere, Oceanus summons a rainstorm from the mist, sheets of water cascading down the mountainside. You taste the acidity in each drop, like licking a lemon rind before the sugar arrives. It's a sensory onslaught that fills you with both exhilaration and relief when you remember you're just a storyteller guiding your listeners, co-adventurers, through this mythic melee. Suddenly, a deafening crack splits the sky as Zeus channels all his might into a single, blazing bolt. It slams into Cronus's scepter, shattering it into cosmic shards. The revolt's turning point arrives with a blaze of light so brilliant it bleaches the storm clouds to white. The boulders Atlas once hurled crumble back into dust. You clutch your ears, the reverberation lingering like a ringing bell well after the thunder subsides. Amid the aftermath, you catch your breath and smell something unexpected. Charred pine needles mingling with scorched earth, an aroma reminiscent of campfires and childhood summers. It grounds you, softening the grandeur of divine war with a touch of human nostalgia. You pause, thinking how odd it is that even apocalyptic battles can feel cozy when narrated in a whisper. Above you, the sky clears in concentric rings, unveiling a tapestry of stars so vivid it feels like stepping into a planetarium. Zeus descends atop a final flicker of lightning, his robes glowing with latent energy. He glances at you, lips curling into a faint smile, proud but tired, as any leader would be after a full-scale coup. You nod in solidarity, though he probably can't see you through the roar of settling thunder. As you walk alongside him, down a ridge now smoothed by divine forces, you notice tiny wildflowers poking through blasted rock, delicate bluebells that somehow survived the tempest. It's a quirky reminder that beauty perseveres even amid cataclysm. Historians still argue whether early Greek cults interpreted these blooms as sacred relics of Zeus's triumph or simply hardy mountain flora. Scholarly debate. The landscape shifts to gentler slopes where rivers carve new channels, their waters glinting in the post-storm light. The scent of wet grass drifts over you, calming and familiar. A flock of starlings circles overhead, their wings beating in rhythmic patterns that feel almost like a ritual salute. You crack a final, whispered joke. Even the locals want front row seats, and the faint echo of wing beats answers you. By the time you reach a plateau overlooking a transformed world, the storm has become a memory. In its place stands an ordered sky, thunderbolts sheathed, winds at peace. Zeus raises his hand, still sparking faint blue embers, and the horizon pulses with the first light of a new rain. You exhale slowly, your chest rising and falling like the calm after a stormy dream. This is Zeus's stormy ascension, the moment when sky, sea, and underworld bowed to a new king, and as you lean on a jagged rock, the lingering tingle of static against your skin lulls you, bridging the gap between myth and dream. The next act waits beyond those gleaming peaks. But for now, breathe deep. Savor the calm that follows chaos, and let your mind drift on currents of electric possibility. You blink and find yourself gliding down a corridor of marble columns wrapped in flowering ivy, each step whispering secrets of divine intrigue beneath your feet. Here, in a secluded courtyard shaded by silvery olive trees, stands Hera, queen of the gods, with regal poise that flickers between maternal warmth and simmering menace. You trudge forward along mosaic floors in intricate black and white patterns that resemble star maps, their smooth tesserae sending gentle vibrations underfoot whenever you shift your weight. Mainstream tradition tells us Hera is renowned for her jealous retribution against Zeus's lovers and offspring. Mainstream fact. yet seldom do you glimpse the loneliness that underpins her wrath. The air surrounding her shimmers with a paradox of scents. The powdery sweetness of freshly gathered lilies mingles with an almost electrical tang, as though the atmosphere itself anticipates her next thunderous command. A distant rumble, more felt than heard, hints at the turbulence slumbering beneath her composed exterior. You crack a hushed joke. I'd hug her if I didn't fear spontaneous lightning strikes. Your first quip cutting through the tension like a sliver of moonlight across dark water. Hera's gaze fixes on you, ice blue eyes narrowing in mild appraisal. She lifts her chin, a gesture of sovereign authority, and the courtyard seems to straighten itself in response. Ivy tendrils curl back, fountains hush, and even the doves roosting on marble capitals pause mid-coo. You swallow, feeling the weight of divine scrutiny, and note a quirky detail. Some small, remote Peloponnesian villages honored Hera under the epithet Argiva, believing her as much a protector of cattle and fertility as a queen of Olympus, a nuance that whispers of agrarian rituals long since buried. Quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether these local cults influenced Hera's broader worship or were later adaptations to reconcile urban and rural faiths. Scholarly debate. As you step closer, the courtyard's centerpiece fountain bursts into motion, a circular basin of polished onyx, its water jets arching like silver threads in slow motion. Stones carved with peacock feathers line its rim, each one shimmering with iridescent highlights. You crouch to taste the mist, cool against your lips and laced with a hint of rose water and mint. The sensory rush steadies your nerves, reminding you that even in the presence of divine royalty, small comforts can soothe a mortal's heart. Hera's attendants, robed in dusky crimson, slip forward bearing a gilded chest encrusted with turquoise and granite. They place it reverently at her feet. With a graceful nod, she unties satin ribbons and lifts the lid, revealing a diadem of woven lilies and golden vine leaves, a symbol of her dominion over marriage, childbirth, and the sacred bonds that bind families. As the diadem settles atop her glossy braids, dawn-like beams filter through olive branches, casting her silhouette in a halo of gentle luminescence. You murmur your second joke. Who knew weddings could get so mythic? The air ripples at your words, and you almost imagine a faint, reluctant smile flicker across her lips. Yet beneath this radiant veneer lies a loneliness as deep as Tartarus. You notice how her shoulders slump just enough to betray the burden of endless vigilance, for every triumphant decree against a mortal rival. Countless nights found her pacing empty corridors, haunted by the echoes of spurned lovers and broken vows. You recall reading that in certain Cretan sanctuaries, sacrifices to Hera included not only bulls and cattle, but also mournful laments from widowed women seeking comfort, an intimate ritual lost to time, yet preserved in fragmentary inscriptions. Quirky tidbit. Scholars still argue whether these laments were expressions of genuine grief or performative tragedies enacted by priests to symbolize Hera's own sorrow. Scholarly debate. A sudden breeze sweeps through the courtyard, scattering rose petals across mosaic patterns. They drift like crimson snow, carpeting your shoes and Hera's dais alike. The petals' velvet softness against your skin is a sensory whisper, grounding you even as your mind reels from the grandeur before you. You step toward one stray blossom and inhale its subtle perfume, honeyed tropic fruit clashing with the bracing edge of morning air. Hera turns to a reflecting pool at the courtyard's edge. In its mirrored surface, you see her face softened by flickering lamplight, yet her expression remains a complex tapestry of pride, pain, and purpose. You realize this queen's true power lies not in her reactive fury, but in her steadfast guardianship of sacred order. Behind her back, courtiers murmur of her roles as Hyperoke, she who upholds, protecting marriage rights and ensuring oaths remain unbroken, mainstream fact. Without her vigilant watch, mythic narratives warn, the very foundations of social cohesion would crumble like neglected mortar. You notice tiny votive figurines at the pool's lip, pearl-white statuettes of clasped hands and entwined hearts, left as offerings by brides beseeching Hera's blessing. One effigy seems chipped, as though dropped in haste by a desperate worshipper. The chipped corner catches the sun, glinting like a tear. You feel a pang of empathy for all her divine majesty. Hera's realm is as much about human hope and heartbreak as it is about cosmic power. Another hushed chuckle escapes you. Imagine the Yelp reviews for a goddess running a marriage counseling service. Your third joke slipping free into the sacred hush. Yet even as humor flickers, you're struck by the poignancy of her dual gifts, fertility and fierce protection. That very cycle, promise and punishment, defines her story. Without warning, an attendant brings a golden stand topped with ripe pomegranates. She lifts one fruit, its ruby seeds glistening like spilled jewels. You watch as she breaks it open, juice dripping down her fingertips. Each seed echoes stories of Persephone's descent to the underworld, a narrative where Hera's blessing and Demeter's grief entwine in ancient drama. The sour-sweet aroma of pomegranate juice mingles with jasmine wafting through the courtyard, a sensory detail so vivid you almost taste it. Hera closes her eyes for a heartbeat, savoring that fleeting blend of flavors and memories. You wonder about her private recollections, weddings celebrated, alliances forged, betrayals avenged. Within her silent pause lies the core of her vulnerability, an eternal longing for fidelity in a world where gods and mortals alike flout sacred oaths. Historians still argue whether Hera's cult emphasized her wrathful punishments as deterrents or celebrated her austere guardianship of societal bonds. Scholarly debate. The courtyard lights dim subtly as twilight's hush approaches. Lanterns flicker on, casting warm pools of gold on marble and vine. Hera turns, her gaze sweeping across the assemblage of statues, lions, peacocks, and regal matron figures. Each statue holds a story of devotion, sacrifice, or penance performed in her honor. You sense her unspoken command: preserve these tales so that mortals and immortals alike remember her worth. You take a final step back, careful not to disturb the mosaic's delicate pattern. As you near the exit archway, you pause to look over your shoulder. Hera stands alone in the golden glow, diadem gleaming, pomegranate seeds strewn like confetti at her feet. In that tableau, she embodies both sovereign grace and hidden grief, a goddess whose power is inseparable from her vulnerability. With a slow exhale, you step through the arch, leaving behind the scent of lilies and pomegranate, the echo of soft laughter, and the electric hum of divine watchfulness. The courtyard's hush follows you, a lullaby woven from marble, flower petals, and mythic whispers. You're ready now to traverse onward, heart attuned to both the majesty and the melancholy of the gods. You blink and find yourself standing at the edge of a restless shoreline, where breakers crash against jagged rocks in a riot of spray and salt. Poseidon's domain unfolds before you, like a liquid cathedral, pillars of foam supporting a trembling sky. You trudge forward along a narrow causeway of barnacled stones, each step humming with the thrum of hidden currents. Mainstream lore tells us Poseidon wields his trident to command the seas, conjure storms, and even shatter Earth in tectonic fits. Mainstream fact. But here you sense the raw breadth of his power in every gust and gush. A briny wind whips your hair as you look up and see Poseidon emerge from a swirling vortex of seawater. His shoulders glisten with spray, beard braided like kelp and crowned with barnacle-encrusted shells. Each inhale brings the sharp bite of salt and brine, so intense you taste it on your tongue. Like licking ocean-splashed seaweed right off the rocks, you quip, "I always wanted a saltwater facial." your first joke of the section landing as a light ripple against the storm's roar. Poseidon raises his trident high, and waves around you swell into rolling walls of water. Sculpted dolphins arch through the troughs, their backs glistening like wet charcoal in moonlight. Curiously, ancient mariners claimed these dolphins were Poseidon's emissaries, guiding lost ships to safety before a tempest submerged them. Quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether dolphin lore sprang from real sea rescue events or was later poetized to calm sailors' fears. Scholarly debate. You trudge deeper onto the causeway, water swirling ankle-deep around your boots. Each wave slams against the stones with thunderous applause, vibrating through your bones. The sea air carries a tang of iodine and something darker, like the ghost of shipwrecks and sunken treasures. You inhale it all, feeling the grandeur of a god whose moods could cradle or crush entire fleets. Poseidon's eyes flicker with restless energy. He thrusts his trident forward, and a tidal wall surges toward you, cresting high enough to blot out the sky. The rush of water pounds in your ears, and you scramble to higher ground, tasting adrenaline and sea spray in equal measure. As the wave breaks, it floods the causeway in a porcelain wash, white and translucent, then retreats with a low moan, leaving barnacles clinging to your ankles. You murmur, a standing ovation, courtesy of the sea. Your second joke slipping free as the roar subsides. Beyond the causeway, you glimpse a hidden lagoon, still and glassy amidst the turmoil. Poseidon strides toward it, each footfall parting the water like a curtain at a grand amphitheater. Schools of silver fish scatter at his passing, darting away in glittering flurries. You lean close to the lagoon's edge, dipping a finger into the surface. Cool, viscous, and tinged with something sweet, like honey blended with salt. It feels alive, as though the water itself remembers every sailor's prayer and every ship's fate. Sensory detail floods in. You smell seaweed drying on sun-warmed rocks, hear distant whale calls, and feel a deep, throbbing rhythm in the water beneath your fingertips. Poseidon kneels at the lagoon's rim and summons a sea nymph, an ethereal shape who rises from the depths. Hair swirling like drifting algae and eyes the color of phosphorescent plankton. She presents him with a coiled conch shell lined in gold. You watch as he lifts it to his lips and blows a resonant note that ripples across sea and sky. The sound is both haunting and comforting, a melody that feels like the ocean's lullaby. Historians still argue whether conch horns were actual ritual instruments at ancient Greek sea festivals or literary flourishes by later dramatists. Scholarly debate. You grin. Your third joke, ready? Guess that's the original foghorn. But you hold it back as the nymph's song crescendos into a harmony that tugs at your heart. The lagoon glows with bioluminescent light, tiny orbs pulsing beneath the surface like a living constellation. You feel a soft tug at your mind, as though the water beckons you to dive in and surrender to its depths. Poseidon stands and raises his trident again, this time thrusting it into the lagoon's center. The earth trembles and seawater spouts skyward in a geyser of crystalline spray. You step back, heart pounding, as droplets drift down like liquid diamonds. Catching light in midair, the smell of ozone sharpens, and you taste the crackle of raw power on your tongue, a reminder that you're in the presence of elemental forces older than memory. Beyond the lagoon, a cavern beckons, a yawning maw carved into basalt cliffs, lit by phosphorescent algae that cling to damp walls. Poseidon enters without hesitation, and you follow on cautious feet. Inside, the air is warm and humid, laced with the musk of deep-sea creatures and the echo of dripping water. The cavern opens into a grand chamber where seahorses, crustaceans, and shining fish glide through flooded corridors, their shapes casting dancing shadows on rocky vaults. It feels like the world's first oceanarium, complete with living exhibits and sonic echoes of whale song. At the chamber's heart, a coral throne rises from the water, its branches spiny and intricate, studded with pearls and glowing crystals. Poseidon sits, and the water calms instantly, ripples subsiding into glassy reflections of his imposing form. Sunlight filters through fissures above, spotlighting him as though he's performing for an unseen amphitheater. You trudge to a seaweed-draped bench and sit, feeling the gentle rocking of tidal currents as a kind of divine rocking chair. He regards you with a nod, and you muster a question. So, weather control? Just part of the job? He smiles, and the corners of his mouth lift in a tide of amusement. You catch a quirky detail. In some coastal sanctuaries, priests sacrificed horses to Poseidon, believing the horse born from his trident strike was the ultimate tribute. Quirky tidbit. Scholars still argue whether the horse and sea connection reflects Minoan equestrian traditions or symbolic linkage of power over land and sea. Scholarly debate. As you speak, Poseidon lifts a crystalline goblet filled with seawater, spiked with sea foam and garnished with mint. He offers it to you. You raise an eyebrow, but curiosity wins over caution. The first sip coats your mouth in briny tang and a faint sweetness. Like salted caramel whipped into cream, it warms your chest, filling you with a bubbly energy that tingles under your skin. Suddenly, the water in the chamber begins to swirl, and schools of fish dart in patterns that mimic ancient celestial charts. Above, a whale's call vibrates through the cavern like a bass note, and you feel the chamber pulse in time. Poseidon stands, sensing the shift, and beckons with his trident. You rise and follow him to a submerged balcony overlooking a hidden trench. Below, bioluminescent creatures glide like stars in a midnight sky. You lean over, mesmerized by the light show, and taste lingering salt on your lips. The god of the sea's voice rumbles in your chest as he intones, "All waters obey, from mountain stream to ocean abyss." His words feel like ancient incantations, resonant with the cadence of waves. You breathe in the cavern's scent, sea foam, coral dust, and the ghost of rain on a distant shore. Your senses saturated. Abruptly, a gush of water sweeps through the chamber's entrance, and you spin to see Poseidon's horses galloping through the surf, maned steeds shimmering like wet silver. They pause, stamping their hooves, sending sprays of water arcing like fireworks. You quip, "Nice ride. Got room for one more?" Your humor ripples through the chamber, mingling with the thunder of hooves and the murmur of fish. As the horses retreat, the cavern's waters calm, and you sense the encounter drawing to a close. Poseidon's trident glows with a soft blue aura, and he presses it to your forehead in a gesture that feels like a benediction of salt and sea. You gasp as you feel a surge of tidal energy pulse through you, an echo of divine power meant to guide and protect those who honor the sea. Then, as swiftly as he appeared, Poseidon steps back, and you find yourself once again on the barnacled causeway. The roaring waves have receded to gentle swells, and the carnival of sea life whispers beneath the surface. You taste salt on your lips, smell wet stone, and feel the lingering hum of oceanic fury vibrating in your bones. You trudge forward, dripping seawater from your sleeves, carrying the tide's song in your heart. The ocean stretches endless before you, both unpredictable and comforting, chaos and calm entwined. And as you turn toward the next adventure, Hades' underworld realm, those waves behind you murmur a lullaby of brine and thunder, guiding you ever deeper into myth. To your left, the river Styx winds in sinuous loops, its obsidian waters rippling like liquid glass. Ferrymen in ragged cloaks drift along its banks, awaiting the coins placed beneath the tongues of the newly dead. A quirky tidbit you won't hear at your next museum tour. Historians still argue whether Charon, the ferryman, was ever worshipped in roadside shrines by frontier communities as a guardian of safe passage, or existed solely in poetic imagination. Scholarly debate. You step closer and catch a whiff of stagnant water mixed with something sweeter, like decaying wine left too long in a cellar, and you pull back, shivering. The banks of Styx are lined with ghosts, translucent forms gliding in silent procession. Each one bears their story etched in the sweep of tattered robes and flickers of lost hope. You trudge past a specter clutching a harp that emits no sound. Then a pair of lovers entwined in eternal dance. A sigh escapes you, and you murmur. Front row seats to the world's longest silent concert. Your second joke echoing faintly in the gloom. Across the river, Cerberus, the three-headed hound, lays watch, each head drooling rivulets of froth studded with bone fragments. His throaty growl rumbles in your chest as you approach. The odor of rotting meat and stale fur assaults your senses. Yet, curiously, some traditions claim that Cerberus's laughter sounds like distant church bells, a soothing aberration that soothed the souls of babies born near graveyards. Quirky tidbit. Scholars still argue whether the dog's triple visage represents past, present, and future, or simply a mythic exaggeration of ordinary watchdogs that once patrolled ancient necropolises. Scholarly debate. You trudge carefully to the foot of a jagged stairway hewn from volcanic rock, each step slick with moss and loose ash. At the summit, a palace of black marble looms, its arches crowned with skull motifs and torch sconces flickering with ghostly blue flame. You quip. Guess it's BYOB here. Bring your own brightness. Your third joke landing lightly against the stony facade. Within the palace's vestibule, shades line the walls like paintings, their faded visages capturing expressions from terror to tranquility. You brush your fingertips along one, feeling a cold shock that tingles through your nerves. The air smells of incense, myrrh, and juniper, a sensory detail that feels incongruous until you recall funerary rites that burned offerings to guide souls. Quirky tidbit. Mainstream sources note that libations to the dead were common in Greek households, poured at home altars known as kiones. Mainstream fact. At the palace's heart, Hades sits upon a throne carved from basalt, his dark robes pooling like ink around his feet. Shades of blue fire flicker in his coal-black eyes as he regards you with mild curiosity. Across from him stands Persephone, radiant yet tempered by shadows, her gown of pomegranate red hinting at the duality of her role as captive queen and springtime herald. You swallow, noticing the faint floral scent she carries, hyacinth and blood orange, an aromatic paradox in a realm of death. Hades inclines his head, and you step forward. His voice is low and sonorous, like distant thunder rolling through empty canyons. "Welcome," he intones, and you feel the floor pulse with his word. You exhale slowly, grounding yourself against the weight of expectation. He gestures toward a mosaic floor depicting the seasons, a tapestry of verdant spring, blazing summer, golden autumn, and stark winter encircling his throne. You quip under your breath. Nice feng shui, 4 seasons in one spot. But the humor fades as you notice tiny cracks between tiles where flickers of green life press upward. It's a fringe detail some oracles interpreted as Persephone's touch ensuring renewal even amid decay. Scholarly debate. Persephone steps forward, offering you a goblet of ebony wine. Hesitantly, you raise it to your lips and taste dark cherries steeped in earth, a flavor both rich and unsettling. Each sip tingles across your palate, like tasting the passage of countless souls condensed into a single draught. A sensory note of cumin and clove slides in, hinting at funerary spices once sprinkled over tombs, an unexpected but poignant detail. As you swallow, the room's torchlight dims, and shadows dance across walls, reenacting scenes of mortal lives, the young warrior lost in battle, the mother bidding farewell to her child, the poet whose words outlived his flesh. You feel tear-bright empathy spring, warmth in your chest that fights the chill. It's a reminder that even in the underworld, emotion endures. Hades watches your reaction, then stands, motioning toward a bronze box at his side. He opens it to reveal 3 seeds glinting like garnets. "These," he says, "bind Persephone and me. Eat not, lest you share our fate." You sense the weight of choice, temptation and consequence in gleaming dust. You nod, keenly aware of pomegranate motifs etched into his scepter behind him, symbols of her seasonal descent, mainstream fact. With a subtle sigh, Persephone steps beside Hades, her hand brushing his as she reclines on a raised dais. You note her fingers, long, pale, and dusted with ashen petals. She offers you a single seed, blood red and lustrous, evil gift or rite of solidarity. You meet her gaze and refuse with a gentle shake, diffusing tension. A soft smile flickers across her lips, a vulnerable moment that hints at her complex duality. Maiden of spring and lady of shades, quirky tidbit. Hades inclines his head in approval. And you exhale the breath you didn't realize you held. The mosaic floor around you shifts, seasons cycling in reverse. Winter back to autumn, an echo of the cyclical promise that death is followed by rebirth. You inhale the mingled scent of damp earth and hyacinth, letting it soothe your core. As you turn to leave, Cerberus's 3 heads lower in unison, offering silent respect rather than fury. You step over the river stones again, feeling lighter than when you arrived, strangely comforted by the underworld's solemn order. The mist parts at the palace entrance, revealing once more the plain of graves, where moonlight glitters on sepulchres. You trudge toward a faint path lined with spectral cypress trees, emblems of mourning and eternal life entwined. The air grows less biting, carrying a faint bird call that seems out of place until you realize it's an echo of Persephone's spring whispers. You quip softly. "Even down here, someone's got to DJ the seasons." And the echo drifts away like a friendly ghost. By the time you reach the riverbank, the Styx's dark waters have stilled into a reflective sheet, mirroring stars you can't see overhead. Charon's boat drifts close, waiting, its simple planks a humble reminder that even gods follow rules. You step aboard, the wood creaking underfoot, and feel a gentle sway as the ferryman guides you back toward the living world. As the banks recede, you taste the underworld's lingering chill and smell the slight sweetness of Persephone's pomegranate seed echoing on your tongue. Then, with a final glance backward, you step onto solid ground once more, the chilling hush transforming into the soft night breeze of your own realm. You trudge onward, heart touched by the gravity of death's dominion and the subtle promise of renewal. Ahead awaits Demeter's harvest woes, where grief above ground conjures seasons below. But for now, you carry the underworld within you, a sacred hush, a quiet strength, and the memory that even in shadows, life pulses on. You blink and find yourself amid rippling fields of wheat that stretch beyond sight, stalks swaying like a golden sea under a low-hanging sun. The air smells of fresh earth and early morning dew, a stark contrast to the dank hush of Hades' realm you just left behind. You trudge forward down a narrow furrow between rows heavy with grain, each step releasing the faint crackle of brittle husks underfoot. Mainstream myth tells us Demeter's grief over Persephone's loss brought famine to humankind, birthing the cycle of seasons. Mainstream fact. Here, as you walk, you feel both the scarcity born of sorrow and the promise of renewal in every trembling ear of wheat before you. Demeter stands tall in a hem of amber robes, hands clasped tightly at her waist. Her eyes, usually warm like sunlit fields, carry a shadow of heartbreak that ripples through the landscape. The wind lifts her hair, dark as fertile soil, and you catch the scent of freshly turned earth drifting around her. It's a sensory detail so vivid, you almost taste the faint bitterness of root vegetables in the air. You quip softly, "I guess this is what they mean by field work." Your first joke of the section landing gently in the quiet. Demeter lifts a hand, and the wheat bows as if under her command. Yet the tips of the stalks are brittle, cracking at her touch, an echo of her sorrow's power to wither life. You step closer, noticing that each broken kernel falls to dust before it touches soil. A quirky tidbit whispered among remote farmsteads who believed Demeter collected these as tears of grain, a practice debated by scholars as symbolic mourning or literal relic gathering, scholarly debate. You trudge onward, feeling the land's pulse beneath your boots, a slow heartbeat aligned with the goddess's grief. In the distance, ravens circle low, their cry sharp against the stillness. Some villagers once thought these birds were Demeter's messengers, bearing news of Persephone's seasonal return. Quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether corvid omens preceded agricultural rites or were later additions to link avian behavior to crop cycles. Scholarly debate. Ahead, a barren patch of ground yawns like a mouth denied sustenance. You kneel and brush your fingers across parched soil, finding cracks that web outward like broken stained glass. A faint whisper escapes you. Talk about a dry spell. Your second joke offers a momentary reprieve as Demeter approaches, her steps measured and unhurried. She kneels beside you and lays a single ear of corn at your feet. Its kernels are soft, not yet hardened by sun or sorrow, an anomaly in this drought-stricken field. She glances at you with eyes that flicker gold in the wan light. "Hope," she says in a voice low and tremulous, persists even in absence. Her words tremble like a faint breeze through empty stalks. A mainstream truth you won't forget. Demeter rises and beckons you to follow as she moves toward a distant grove of olive trees. The grove's trees stand skeletal, leaves shriveled and curled, trunks gnarled like arthritic hands, yet interspersed are saplings with bright green shoots, as if life itself rebels against desolation. You trudge alongside her, feeling the duality of decay and emergence, a sensory paradox where damp moss clings to bark even as tendrils of green unfurl, an image both haunting and hopeful. She halts under the shade of a lone tree where sacred barley once sprouted in abundance. Now, nothing grows beyond brittle stems. Demeter cups her hands around her face and weeps, tears like molten gold dripping to earth and hissing upon contact. You catch their scent, honeyed grain scorched by grief, and feel the trembling of the ground beneath her sorrow. It's a raw, visceral moment that leaves your breath stuck in your throat. A distant sound draws your gaze, women chanting in mournful cadence, circling a stone altar draped in crimson cloth. They beat their chests with hands powdered in white chalk, their voices layered in a dirge that melds into the wind. Some cults held these rites at harvest's brink, mourning Persephone's descent each year with lamentations to coax Demeter's mercy. Quirky tidbit. Scholars still argue whether these lamentations were spontaneous folk traditions or formalized cult ceremonies designed to dramatize mythic cycles. Scholarly debate. You trudge toward the circle of mourners, the air vibrating with their sorrowful hymn. Each chant seems to summon memories from the land itself. Distant laughter at spring festivals, the crunch of ripe fruit underfoot, children's playful shouts echoing through blooming orchards. You quip, Earth's greatest hits, sadly out of season. Your third joke falling like a soft pebble in a silent pond. Demeter raises her arms, and the chanting women fall silent. The wind stills, the fields hold their breath, and even the birds hush. From her robe's fold, she withdraws a handful of seed, golden oats mixed with barley, and casts them across the parched earth. Each seed strikes the ground with a tiny thud, imprinting the promise of rebirth in dust. You hear a faint crackle, like static before a storm, as the seeds awaken something deep below. The earth trembles, sending ripples through the barren soil. Tiny green shoots push upward, piercing the cracks like silver spears of hope. The air warms, carrying the perfume of fresh growth, clover, young wheat, and hyacinth. You inhale deeply, tasting the pure, sap-rich scent of renewal on your tongue. Demeter smiles, a gentle curve that lights her sadness for a heartbeat. Her voice, stronger now, intones a flowering incantation that echoes across fields. From this sorrow springs the cycle. From this darkness comes light. As she speaks, the grove's olive trees stir, leaves unfurling like memory rekindled. The ravens take flight, their calls transformed into caws of praise. You stand amid burgeoning life, the ground at your feet humming with energy. Each kernel sprouting in defiance of drought carries a fragment of divine yearning. Historians still argue whether this seasonal resurrection metaphor guided early agricultural societies or was a later narrative to explain observable crop patterns. Scholarly debate. Sunlight filters through shifting clouds, gilding the scene in a warm, forgiving glow. Demeter reaches down, plucks a sprig of green, and hands it to you. Its texture is cool and supple, veins like delicate threads of living gold. You press it between your fingers, feeling its pulsing life echo in your palm. She leads you back to the furrow where you began, where the wheat now stands tall, emerald and gold blending into a tapestry of promise. The distant fields shimmer with motion, blades bending gently in unison. A silent song of renewal. You quip. Talk about a glow-up, and laughter bubbles from your chest, unbidden yet welcome. Demeter's footsteps guide you to a stone threshing floor, where a harvest once began and now recommences. Mortals will soon gather to reap this bounty, celebrating remixing sorrow into sustenance. The scent of freshly cut grain drifts through the air, warming your senses like bread fresh from an oven. As you trudge away, leaving the goddess to her divine work, you feel the cycle turn beneath your feet. Once, famine reigned. Now, life emerges in waves of green and gold. You carry a spark of promise in your heart, proof that grief and hope are inseparable partners in the dance of seasons. You pause at the field's edge, tasting the gentle breeze and inhaling the earthy sweetness of rippling crops. Ahead lie Apollo's luminous journey and beyond. But for now, you stand bathed in the glow of harvest's triumph. The promise of abundance hums through the land, lulling you toward the next mythic realm. Each breath a soft reminder that life always finds a way to sprout again. You blink and find yourself stepping onto a ridge overlooking a vast expanse of sky painted in rose and gold, as if dawn itself were leaning in to whisper secrets. Here begins Apollo's luminous journey, an odyssey that carries the sun's chariot across the heavens and weaves healing light into mortal lives. You trudge forward along a worn path of sun-warmed stones, each one radiating a gentle heat that seeps into your souls and reminds you of the power beneath your feet. Mainstream myth tells us Apollo, son of Zeus and Leto, steers the sun's golden chariot each day, bringing dawn to the world. Mainstream fact. Yet beyond that familiar tale lies a tapestry of music, prophecy, and divine paradox waiting to unfold. Above you, the horizon blazes as Helios's steeds, Apollo's celestial horses, paw the sky. Hot breath misting in the cool morning air, their coats glint bronze in the early light, manes streaming like liquid sunbeams. And you quip, hope they have sunscreen. Your first joke of the section landing lightly in the glowing dawn. The air smells faintly of saffron and ozone, a combination so vivid you almost taste saffron lobes on your tongue. Apollo descends from his chariot, robes drifting in the breeze like tendrils of flame. His lyre, crafted by his half-brother Hermes from a tortoise shell and 7 strings, hangs at his side, catching glints of sun that dance across its polished surface. Some fringe traditions claim the lyre's sound first tamed wild beasts in Arcadian forests, calming panthers and bears alike with gentle melodies. Quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether such tales stem from ceremonial animal taming rituals or poetic license to amplify Apollo's mastery of music. Scholarly debate. You follow him down the slope, each footstep stirring up motes of golden dust that drift in lazy spirals. The scent of warmed thyme and crushed grasses drifts through the air, sensory details that blend the divine and the pastoral. Apollo pauses at a grove of laurel trees, their silvery leaves rustling like applause. He plucks a sprig, biting a leaf to test its bitterness before weaving it into a wreath. You note a quirky detail. Laurel wreaths first crowned athletes at Pythian Games held in Apollo's honor, centuries before the Olympic torch ignited modern imaginations. Mainstream fact. Scholars still argue whether Pythian rituals predated Olympic ones or emerged as their more musical counterpart. Scholarly debate. Apollo raises the wreath to his brow, and the grove brightens as if lit by an inner flame. He strides onward, and with each step, flowers bloom, yellow poppies, white mandrakes, and deep violet hyacinths, painting a path of living light. You quip. Talk about a walk in the park. Your second joke echoing through petals that drift around you like confetti as you descend toward a sunlit clearing. The lyre's first notes ripple across the valley. The melody is crystalline, a cascading waterfall of sound that shimmers with warmth. You can almost feel the vibrations in your chest, steadying your heartbeat as the music soothes restlessness from your mind. Sensory detail floods in, the faint metallic tang of warmed brass, the soft rustle of wind through reeds, the distant murmur of a stream trickling through sun-splashed stones. Suddenly, a wounded doe emerges from the brush, hind leg bent at an unnatural angle. It collapses with a soft groan of pain, eyes glistening with panic. Apollo kneels beside it and lays a gentle hand on its flank. His touch radiates warmth, and the doe's breathing steadies as bruises fade beneath his fingers. You lean closer, inhaling the scent of healing balm, pounded myrrh mixed with olive oil, a fringe remedy credited in some rural apothecary texts to early priestesses of Apollo. Quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether these balms reflect real medicinal practices or poetic metaphors for divine mercy. Scholarly debate. You crack a quietly triumphant joke. Best vet visit ever. And the doe stands, then bounds away, leaving behind only hoofprints glowing faintly in the earthen ground. The clearing seems to sigh in relief, as though exhaling all lingering pain. Apollo rises, lyre in hand, and gestures for you to follow along a winding path toward Delphi's slopes. The scent of bay leaves, crushed stone, and distant incense swirls around you. Each inhalation grounds you in anticipation. As you approach the temple's threshold, you notice pilgrims strung out in lines like glowing threads, priests bearing offerings, oracles clutching laurel branches, and supplicants trembling with hope. They journey here seeking prophecy from Pythia, the priestess who channels Apollo's voice. You quip. Rush hour for divine commuters. Your third joke slipping free as you weave through the throng. Inside the temple, a hush so profound it feels like inhaling absence greets you. Flickering oil lamps cast wavering shadows on stone walls carved with tales of heroic quests and celestial interventions. The air tastes faintly of burnt bay leaves, a sensory echo of purification rites meant to prepare the sacred space. Apollo steps to a raised tripod where Pythia kneels, her hair loose, eyes unfocused. A soft plume of vapors rises from chinks in the stone floor, ethereal fumes that ancient writers claimed induced trance. Quirky tidbit. Scholars still argue whether these gases were naturally occurring ethylene or literary embellishments from later dramatists' scholarly debate. Apollo raises his hand, and Pythia inhales deeply, then exhales in a rhythmic chant of words that ripple with hidden meaning. The crowd leans forward, rapt, as the god's presence flows through her in trembling syllables. The prophecies hover between clarity and riddle, promising guidance to kings and travelers alike. You stand at the edge of the chamber, tasting the charged hush like bittersweet honey on your tongue. Emerging from the temple, you feel the shift from oracular gravity to exuberant celebration. Musicians strike kitharas in jubilant rhythms, and dancers whirl in circles, feet stirring dust into suns of their own. Offerings of honey cakes and fresh fruit glint on marble altars. The scent of roasted lamb mingles with sweet mead, a sensory feast that swells your senses. You quip. All-you-can-eat buffet, ancient style. Letting humor lighten the holy fervor, Apollo leads you to a terrace overlooking the Gulf of Corinth, where sunlight ripples across cerulean waters. He raises his lyre again, plucking a single note that carries like a clear bell across sea and sky. Each string vibrates in harmony, echoing through limestone cliffs and olive groves. The melody swells into a soaring refrain, and you find tears pricking your eyes, not from sorrow, but from the exquisite beauty of a world touched by divine music. As the final notes fade, Apollo turns to you, golden aura softening in his smile. He places the lyre's strap in your hand, eyes twinkling. Carry this song when night quiets your mind, he murmurs, voice like sun-warmed honey. You nod, feeling the lyre's subtle weight settle against your palm, humming with lingering resonance. He strides toward his chariot, horses pawing sky again as the day marches on. You follow, stepping onto a sunlit road flanked by cypress trees that sway in silent applause. The scent of warmed resin drifts through the air. You quip a final joke. Guess I've got a new playlist. And laughter ripples through the path like golden motes as you trudge onward, lyre in hand. The world seems brighter, each bloom more vivid, every breeze more musical. Apollo's luminous journey has stitched sunlight and sound into your soul, weaving a melody that hums beneath your skin. Ahead lie Artemis's moonlit hunt and further tales of divine drama. But for now, you breathe in warmth and hope, letting the gentle echo of that final refrain lull you toward the next mythic realm. You blink and find yourself slipping into twilight's hush, where the first silver sliver of moon slices through a canopy of whispering pines. Here, Artemis's moonlit hunt unfolds, a ballet of shadows and soft footfalls across a forest floor carpeted in moss and night-blooming lilies. You trudge along a winding deer trail, your boots muffled on damp earth that releases the earthy perfume of mushrooms and pine resin with every step. Mainstream myth tells us Artemis, daughter of Zeus and Leto, is the virgin huntress who roams wild places with her silver bow and a pack of celestial hounds. Mainstream fact. Yet beneath that famed prowess lies a tender paradox, the protector of wolves and children, equally fierce and compassionate. Above, the moon drifts through wisps of cloud like a slow lantern guiding your way. You tilt your head to catch that pale glow, then quip. Someone dim that spotlight already. Your first joke of the section slipping softly into the nighttime stillness. The scent of night jasmine drifts through the air, a sensory note that feels both intoxicating and grounding, reminding you of summer evenings under star-strewn skies. Ahead, a soft bark echoes through the undergrowth. Atalanta, the swiftest of Artemis's hounds, her coat shimmering like obsidian in moonlight, bounds toward you. Her paws stir silvery dust, leaving tracks that sparkle faintly before fading. You kneel to offer a hand, and Atalanta noses it gently, her breath warm and musky. It's a quirky detail that some mountain villagers claim these hounds were born from the froth of Artemis's breast milk, imbuing them with both divine loyalty and a hint of wildness. Quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether such tales originate from ancient ritual adoptions of orphaned pups or later mythic embellishment. Scholarly debate. A rustle ahead catches your attention. Twin fawns step into a moonbeam. Their eyes wide with innocent curiosity, Artemis emerges silently behind them. Garbed in a silver chiton that drapes like liquid moonlight over her lithe form, her bow, carved from yew wood and strung with starlight, rests at her back. You rise and quip. Careful, those look like vegan deer. Your second joke floating under branches dripping with dew. Artemis lifts a finger, and the fawns retreat into shadow unharmed. This is her domain rule. Hunt only what she permits. Protect what she cares for. The forest seems to exhale in relief, each leaf uncurled just a fraction in gratitude. You breathe in the scent of wet bark and crushed fern, sensory details that anchor you in a moment suspended between predator and protector. She turns, silent as a falling star, and beckons you to follow deeper into the woods where moonbeams flicker through ancient oaks. Each step she takes stirs the forest, coaxing fireflies into dance. Their blinking lights trace ellipses around your head like miniature auroras. You quip softly. LEDs are overrated, earning a glance and a faint half-smile, rare warmth from the goddess of the hunt. The path leads to a rocky glade where a pack of celestial hounds gathers around a polished pool reflecting the night sky. Artemis kneels by the water's edge and cups her hands, lifting droplets that shimmer like liquid silver. She sprinkles them into the air, and they drift downward like sparkling snow. You step closer, feeling the mist settle on your skin, cool and tinged with something sweet, perhaps the essence of moonlight itself. Suddenly, the hounds lift their heads and howl in perfect harmony, a chorus that ripples through the woodland like an echo of the cosmos. The sound vibrates in your chest, a primal song linking earth, beast, and sky. Artemis stands and draws an arrow tipped with starlight, not for killing, but for guidance. Her arrows mark trails, boundaries, and rites of passage. She knocks the arrow and lets it fly. It whistles through the air and strikes a distant oak, embedding itself with a soft thud. The tree pulses with faint light, signaling a sacred grove where hunters must tread respectfully. You follow Artemis to that grove, passing under a natural arch formed by interlaced branches, ancient runes carved into bark, glyphs of stars, moon phases, and animal tracks gleam with phosphorescence. Some traditions held that these carvings were prayerful vows etched by hunters seeking balance between need and reverence. Quirky tidbit. Scholars still argue whether rune carving rituals influenced early alphabetic scripts or served purely as cultic boundary markers. Scholarly debate. The glade opens to reveal a clearing where silver blossoms cluster, moonflowers and white poppies that release gentle fragrance whenever a breeze stirs. Artemis steps among them, her feet light, brushing petals that glow faintly at her touch. You kneel beside her as she gathers a handful, crushing petals in her palm until their dew-like juices tint her fingers pale lavender. You inhale the delicate aroma, a mix of vanilla and night-blooming stock that hangs in the air like a lullaby for the senses. Artemis rises and extends her hand, offering you crushed petals. For peaceful dreams, she whispers, voice soft as moonlit foam. You catch them on your tongue, the taste floral and cooling, and feel a wave of serene calm wash through your mind. Your third joke drifts out. Best tea I've ever had. And Artemis's laughter lilts like wind chimes, rare and treasured. The goddess guides you to a rocky ledge overlooking a valley where mountain goats graze on cliffside grasses. She gestures, and a herd of deer appears below, silver silhouettes against emerald pines. She raises her bow and lets slip 3 arrows in rapid succession, each finding not flesh but a nearby boulder, carving sigils of protection that glow softly. You note a sensory detail. The echo of arrows against stone carries the crispness of cracked ice in winter, yet it resonates with a warmth that defeats night's chill. These protective sigils ensure safe passage for travelers and hunters alike. A fringe custom in some Delphi-adjacent oracular sites where pilgrims received Artemis's blessing before seeking prophecy. Quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether such rituals were local Hellenic practices or later additions by Hellenistic cults blending deities. Scholarly debate. Artemis turns to you, moonlight glinting off her bow, and places her hand on your shoulder. You feel the ripple of divine energy, strength and stillness intertwined. She bestows a silent blessing, the hunter's keen sight and the guardian's fierce compassion. You taste the faint tang of metal at your lips, like moonlight itself condensed into breath. The pack of celestial hounds forms a circle around you, their breaths creating misty halos in the soft night air. Together, you and Artemis stand at the crossroads of wild and tame, predator and protector, dusk and dawn. The forest hums in acceptance. Crickets trill, and distant owls hoot a lullaby for watchers of the night. As you prepare to depart, Artemis steps back, raising her bow in salute. The moon overhead glows fuller now, its light bathing you in silver reassurance. You quip, "Next time, I'll bring my hunting license." And she winks, an intimate gesture reserved for favored companions. You trudge back along the deer trail, moonflowers curling closed behind you, as if bidding a tender farewell. The scent of night jasmine and crushed petals lingers in your senses, guiding you onward. Ahead awaits Ares' war echoes and the crescendo of divine conflict. But for now, you carry Artemis's blessing, a heart both steadfast and gentle, ready to navigate myths under moonlight and wakeful dreams. You blink and find yourself on a wind-swept plateau where the air tastes of iron and smoke, the horizon streaked with crimson echoes of distant battle. Here unfolds Ares' war echoes, an arena of clashing steel and rattling shields that trembles with the pulse of combat. You trudge forward over churned earth, dotted with spent arrow shafts and dented helmets, each step crunching like a funeral drumbeat beneath your boots. Mainstream myth tells us Ares embodies the raw brutality of war, reveling in bloodshed and strife. Mainstream fact. Yet within this cacophony lies a deeper question. What price do mortals and gods pay for conflict? A trumpet blast, harsh and metallic, rips through the air, and you flinch as the sound reverberates in your chest. You quip. Guess that's one way to clear a queue. Your first joke cutting through the clash like a glint of sun on steel. The scent of sweat and tamed fear drifts past you, mingling with the acrid tang of burning oil poured into motes. A line of hoplites locks shields in unbroken phalanx, spears poised, faces grim beneath Corinthian helmets. Historians still argue whether the phalanx formation originated as ritual dance or tactical genius. Scholarly debate. Off to your right, a squadron of cavalry spurs across the field, hooves pounding in unison like ritual drums. Their riders wear bronze cuirasses etched with wolf motifs, Ares' sacred animal, believed in fringe cults to channel the god's ferocity into mortal bloodlines. Quirky tidbit. You lean in, tasting dust and hot leather, and murmur, "VIP seats for wolf enthusiasts." The cavalry charges a line of chariots, iron-shod wheels snapping wooden ankles like kindling. The cacophony intensifies, hammers echoing as warriors swing maces that crack skulls with hollow thuds. You step behind a battered shield wall, breathing deeply to steady your heart. The metallic clang of sword-on-shield rings in concert with warriors' shouts and wounded groans. Ares strides at their forefront, towering in bronze armor spiked with dragon scales. His spear, tipped in starlight-hued iron, gleams with cruel promise. The air around him crackles with hostility, a living aura that tangles in your hair. You quip. Talk about a spicy aura, and the humor lands like a spark against tinder, brief, bright, and quickly swallowed by noise amid the fray. You spot two fallen soldiers locked in a grim embrace, one cradled by the other's arms, both eyes glazed with shock. It's a poignant moment of humanity amid savagery. You inhale the scent of clotted blood and leather, your stomach twisting, and whisper, "Even heroes deserve a handheld moment." The memory of that scene sticks in your mind like a breadcrumb of compassion in a forest of violence. Ares raises his spear and roars, and the earth trembles beneath the weight of his fury. Thunder cracks above. As if Zeus himself protests his son's bloodlust, you trudge forward, shield raised, sensing a strange pull to witness the god's brutality and perhaps understand its place in mortal destiny. Each breath you draw tastes of iron and fear, yet beneath it lingers adrenaline's sharp thrill. In a lull between clashes, you catch sight of a fringe ritual, priests of Ares standing in a circle, chanting in staccato bursts. Their voices harmonize with war drums carved from skulls, another debated practice among scholars. Were these remains honored relics or taboo warnings? Scholarly debate. They sprinkle barley and wolf's blood at Ares' feet, a symbolic offering to sate both hunger for grain and thirst for strife. Quirky tidbit. You step closer, the croaking chant vibrating through your bones. Ares notices, his gaze slicing through the din. He beckons you with a single finger, and you approach as shields part before you. His voice rumbles. Witness war's truth. He moves through the battlefield with impossible speed, his spear sweeping arcs of destruction. You shiver as you feel the wind of each strike, tasting dust and ozone on your tongue. Suddenly, the god pauses beside you, lowering his spear. The sudden hush is deafening, arms frozen. Horses stepped mid-gallop. He studies you, eyes burning with raw intensity. For a heartbeat, you sense not only rage but weariness, the weight of unending conflict upon immortal shoulders. It's a paradox that cuts deeper than any blade. You muster a joke. "Big day, huh?" The words stumble out, awkward in the charged silence. Ares' lips curl into something almost like a smirk. He points toward a ruined watchtower where survivors huddle, shields raised in fear. Beneath that tower, a mother cradles a dying child, tears glinting in dust and sunlight. You feel tears sting your own eyes as you inhale the pungent scent of sweat and sorrow. The god's gaze shifts, and you realize he too recognizes tragedy amid triumph. Without warning, Ares lifts his spear and slashes through the sky, summoning a storm of shards, ceramic pots, broken spears, and shattered shields that rains upon the battlefield, scattering combatants in desperate flight. The shriek of splintering wood and clashing metal fills your ears. It's an awe-inspiring display of power and a brutal reminder that war's scope extends beyond mortal folly. As the storm dissipates, the mother and child vanish, leaving only empty space in the tower's shadow. Ares turns to you, a flicker of sorrow softening his features. "War demands sacrifice," he intones, voice low, yet its echoes shape nations. You swallow hard, tasting tears on your lips and feeling the tremor of his words resonate through your chest. The battlefield quiets as warriors pause, battered and breathless, to gather wounded and mourn the dead. Ares steps back, letting the mortals reclaim the field. He strides toward a shattered shield planted upright, an impromptu memorial, and plants his spear beside it. The mound of shields and weapons forms a silent tribute to those lost, a gritty totem of remembrance amid chaos. You trudge toward that memorial, kneeling to touch the shield's chipped surface. The metal feels cold and real beneath your fingertips, etched with names scratched hastily by fellow soldiers. The scent of earth and broken steel fills your senses. You quip softly. They'll have quite the story up here, offering a smile that mingles respect and sorrow. Ares raises his hand in salute, then vanishes in a swirl of dust and blood-red mist. The plateau falls silent, save for distant moans and the whispered prayers of survivors. You rise, brushing blood-speckled dirt from your knees. Your heart pounds with the paradoxical mix of horror and wonder as you walk away from the aftermath. The wind carries the faint echo of drums and distant cries. You taste iron on your tongue, a lingering reminder of war's price. Footsteps echo behind you, but when you turn, no one stands. Only the memorial remains, spears and shields entwined like a crown of thorns. You continue onward, each breath tasting of somber reflection. Ares' war echoes fade into the distance, but reverberate within, urging you to ponder conflict's dual nature, destruction and unity, suffering and solidarity. Ahead awaits Athena's city of wisdom, a realm where strategy tempers strife and minds forge nations. Yet for now, you carry Ares' lesson, even in chaos. Honor and memory endure. You blink and find yourself atop a marble stairway that ascends into mist. Each step carved with interlaced owls and olive branches, symbols of Athena's domain. The air tastes of warm stone and crushed olive pulp, a sensory blend that greets you like the promise of fresh-pressed oil on crisp bread. You trudge upward, each footfall echoing like measured syllables of an oration. Mainstream myth tells us Athena sprang fully armored from Zeus's brow, embodying wisdom and warfare in equal measure. Mainstream fact, here in her city, every column, every pavement slab, seems an offering to her strategic mind. At the summit, Athens sprawls before you, white temples crowned with gleaming pediments, narrow streets lined with artisanal workshops, and a teeming agora brimming with merchants, philosophers, and the occasional barefoot poet. The scent of baked bread mingles with the heady aroma of synaptic debate, oakwood benches groaning beneath scholars deep in discourse. You quip. Talk about a campus with top-notch Wi-Fi. Your first joke landing amid the hum of intellectual commerce. Ahead stands the Parthenon, its Doric columns bathed in golden light, each fluted shaft rising like a column of thought. You approach the entrance and pause to trace a finger along a marble relief depicting Athena's gift of the olive tree to the Athenians, an origin myth that secured her patronage. Mainstream fact. Under your touch, the stone feels cool and surprisingly smooth, as though it has been polished by centuries of reverent hands. Below the relief, a fringe inscription references Erichthonius, an autochthonous king born of Athena's attempted union and the earth itself, suggesting a deeper layer to the goddess's relationship with the land. Quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether this legend sprang from early autochthonic cults or was later grafted onto Athenian lore to legitimize local claims of indigenous heritage. Scholarly debate. You trudge past columns and make your way toward the inner cella, where a colossal statue of Athena Parthenos looms, ivory and gold intertwined in divine artistry. Her shield rests before her, embossed with the Gorgon's head, symbol of protective power, and at her side, Nike, the winged goddess of victory, stands poised to crown the city. You quip softly. Instant upgrade. Switch your app icon to that shield. Your second joke making you smile as the statue's golden armor seems to shimmer in approval. Outside, the bustling agora draws you in next. Cobblestone streets radiate outward, flanked by stalls of potters, weavers, and metallic smiths who pound bronze in rhythmic cadence. You inhale the scent of hot metal mingled with cedarwood shavings, and your ears catch a babble of voices, rhetoricians declaiming to eager audiences perched on stepped benches. A cluster of orators debates the merits of democracy versus oligarchy. Gesturing passionately with laurel-crowned hands, you lean in to catch a fringe viewpoint. Some radical thinkers argued women and medics deserved full citizenship, a debate rarely recorded in official chronicles. Quirky tidbit. Scholars still argue whether these voices were actual precursors to democratic reform or rhetorical flourishes by later historians envisioning a more inclusive past. Scholarly debate. You trudge along the Peripatos, a sun-warmed walkway encircling the Acropolis, where olive groves whisper under a gentle breeze. The soft susurration carries the faint scent of oregano and thyme, herbs once strewn on altars in Athena's honor. You collect a sprig of thyme, the dried leaves crackling softly under your fingers, and breathe in its pungent aroma, a sensory tribute to ancient sacrificial rituals. Your path leads to the Stoa of Attalos, its colonnade offering shade to students engrossed in scrolls. You spot a scribe meticulously copying texts by lamplight, the odor of papyrus and beeswax illuminating each painstaking stroke. The scene whispers of Athena's patronage of crafts and knowledge, the goddess of both loom and library. You quip, "Bedtime reading just got a divine upgrade," your third joke carrying an affectionate edge as you admire the scribe's dedication. Suddenly, a procession emerges, priestesses carrying a silver urn of olive oil, destined for the Panathenaic festival's sacred fire. They move in solemn steps, garments rustling like wind-tossed leaves. At their head strides a young archon, resplendent in embroidered robes, holding a scroll inscribed with names of Athenian heroes and top scholars, an honor roll that Athena's temple itself records in bronze plaques. Mainstream sources note the Panathenaia's blend of athletic contest and poetic competition as a celebration of civic unity. Mainstream fact: you trudge after the procession to the Theater of Dionysus, not far but symbolically linked, the amphitheater carved into the Acropolis's slope. Rows of stone seats curved like concentric waves, filled even at off hours by philosophers discussing virtue's nature. The scent here shifts. Powdered clay underfoot mingles with fermenting grapes from nearby vineyards, an olfactory tapestry of drama and delight. You quip, "Front row seat to Socrates unplugged," conjuring laughter even from a passing satyr mask motif etched on a bench end. Amid this intellectual festival, you stop at a mosaic inset in the plaza, an old olive tree entwined with a spear and an owl. It marks the fabled spot where Athena and Poseidon competed for patronage. Their conflict settled by mortal vote. Quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources place this contest at the Areopagus, others on the Acropolis itself. Scholars still argue where democracy first dawned. Scholarly debate. You lean against a column base, feeling the stone's warmth seep into your back, and close your eyes. The hum of voices, the caress of breeze, and the heady aroma of olives and lore coalesce into a moment of profound stillness. Athena's essence, balanced strategy, practical wisdom, and civic care, pervades the air, urging those who enter her city to think, to build, to debate above you. The Parthenon's frieze depicts the gods' assembly, each figure sculpted with serene authority. You glance skyward as a pair of owls, her sacred birds, wheel overhead, calling softly in the gathering dusk. Their hoots carry a timbre of counsel, an avian echo of Athena's watchful gaze. As twilight deepens, lanterns flicker on in colonnades and market stalls. The city's pulse shifts from commerce to conversation, from craft to camaraderie. You trudge down a side street toward a modest courtyard where musicians tune lyres and flutes, preparing for nighttime elegies in Athena's name. The air fills with notes so delicate they feel like whispers of distant starlight. With one last breath, you inhale the mingled scents of olive oil, beeswax, parchment, and spiced wine, Athena's city in a single, intoxicating sensory bloom. You step from the Acropolis's shadow into the cool embrace of evening, heart buoyed by the memory of marble and mind aflame with insight. Ahead lies Dionysus's ebullient revelry. But for now, you carry Athens within you, a symphony of reason and art, of measured thought and spirited debate. The echoes of Athena's wisdom hum beneath your ribs, guiding your steps as you descend the marble path. Each click of your heel a metronome in the grand composition of myth. You blink and find yourself swept into a riot of color and clamor, where wine flows like molten rubies through shaded groves and laughter rings beneath trellises heavy with grape clusters. Here, Dionysus's ebullient revelry reigns, a whirlwind of ecstatic celebration where the boundaries between mortal and divine blur in a dance of frenzy and release. You trudge forward along vine-draped paths, each step stirring petals from crushed blooms that scent the air with heady jasmine and the musky sweetness of fermenting grape must. Mainstream myth tells us Dionysus, son of Zeus and Semele, brings liberation through wine and divine madness, unshackling souls from mundane constraint in his Bacchic rites. Mainstream fact. Yet within the delirium lies a paradox: madness and insight, chaos and communion entwined inextricably. Ahead, a chorus of satyrs, goat-legged and gleeful, swoops by, their laughter ricocheting off moss-covered trunks. You quip under your breath. Guess they found the happy hour. Your first joke lifting like a cork from a freshly popped amphora. The satyrs toss wreaths of ivy at each other, their wild eyes glittering with mischief. You inhale the fermented scent of honeyed barley, mingled with the subtle spice of crushed thyme, a sensory tapestry both intoxicating and grounding. A slight breeze carries the faint rumble of tambourines and double flutes, weaving a soundtrack that pulses through your veins. Dionysus appears then, stepping from behind a rustling curtain of vines, crowned with ivy leaves and plump grapes. His robes shimmer in every shade of sunset, crimson, purple, and gold, and his skin glows with an inner luminescence. In one hand, he grips a cantharos brimming with wine that seems to capture the very essence of twilight. In the other, a thyrsus topped with a pine cone, symbol of both fertility and the god's wild power. You step closer and catch the wine's aroma, dark cherries, figs, and a whisper of black pepper, so vivid you almost taste the warmth spreading through your chest. Curiously, in some rustic communities, revelers painted their faces with grape stain to honor Dionysus's transformative power. Quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether this face-painting custom predated theatrical makeup or was a later flourish to heighten dramatic effect. Scholarly debate. He raises his goblet in salute, and the crowd's roar crescendos, a living wave of jubilation that thunders through the grove. You quip, "Cheers to living history," letting your voice carry over the swirl of bodies and lantern glow as you lift your own cup and sip. The wine coats your mouth in velvet warmth, leaving a lingering tingle that tickles your senses like a secret blessing. Dionysus gestures toward a circular clearing at the grove's heart. There, masked maenads, women possessed by divine frenzy, whirl in a dizzying spiral, their feet drumming rhythms on polished stones. You trudge to the edge and feel the ground throb with their collective heartbeat. Each drumbeat resonates in your chest like a tribal summons, an invitation to surrender your inhibitions. You quip. VIP circle for ecstatic fitness, and a few revelers flash amused grins before losing themselves again in sacred frenzy. Suddenly, a thicket parts and an old villager named Melanthius stumbles out, his eyes glassy and voice slurred, known for his prophetic ramblings after one too many libations. He ambles toward Dionysus, clutching a twisted staff. The god lifts a hand and touches Melanthius's brow. The man's eyes clear, and he proclaims riddling verses that ripple through the grove like incense smoke. Some traditions held that Dionysian ecstasy unlocked prophetic gifts, a belief echoed in oracular poems at ancient festivals. Quirky tidbit. Scholars still argue whether genuine prophetic practices arose from these rites or were literary inventions to dramatize the god's mystery. Scholarly debate. You lean in to catch his final prophecy. When vine and vine collide, hearts unravel in threads of starlight. The phrase hangs, golden and enigmatic, like a shard of cut crystal reflecting dawn. The revelers pause, breath caught in throats, before erupting into renewed celebration that feels both joyous and reverent. From the grove's edge, marble statues of satyrs and nymphs gifted by city patrons stand half-buried under vines, witnessing centuries of revelry. You trudge past one such statue, fingertips brushing cool stone, and inhale the scent of damp marble warmed by hidden lanterns. It feels like touching a heartbeat preserved in time, breathing new life into cold rock. Music swells as flautists call to one another in spiraling melodies, joined by drummers whose sticks strike hides taut with anticipation. You are drawn into a circle where dancers form alternating lines, mortals and half-gods entwined, feet tracing patterns older than any living memory. You step in, the cool earth yielding underfoot, as the rhythm pulses through you, guiding your limbs in steps both instinctual and surprising. A satyr offers you his hand, guiding you into a spontaneous reel. You laugh, the sound bright as breaking dawn, and follow his lead, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, then a swift pivot. Each movement releases laughter and light, a physical prayer to the god's liberating spirit. You note how the moonlight filters through lattice work of leaves, casting dappled patterns on the dancers' faces, an ever-shifting tapestry of shadow and glow, as sweat beads on your forehead. You catch sight of a fringe ritual, masked priests of Dionysus standing in a ring, chanting in measured staccato. Their voices layer over the drums, creating a soundscape of reverent madness. They pour offerings of honey and barley into a silver chalice at Dionysus's feet, a symbolic libation acknowledging wine's dual origins in earth and human toil. Quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether these libations mirrored actual agricultural rites or served as ritualistic acts to sanctify the grape's transformation into wine. Scholarly debate. Dionysus raises his thyrsus, and the grove falls hushed. You taste anticipation on your tongue, sharp as unripe grapes. Then, with a swift motion, he breaks a cluster of grapes and tosses them into the air. Revelers scamper and snatch the fruits mid-fall, biting into their sweet flesh with joyous abandon. You laugh again, quipping, "Free snacks, courtesy of divinity," and catch a falling grape yourself, bursting with warmth on your tongue. The chanting restarts, now layered with cries of "Yee" that swell into a collective roar. You join in, your voice lifted by the god's presence, echoing through branches and across moss-carpeted ground. Sensory detail floods in, the sticky press of grape juice on skin, the cool brush of night air against damp shoulders, the electric charge of communal exultation as the revelry reaches its peak. Dionysus motions again, and suddenly the night's shadows peel back to reveal hidden wonders. Lantern-lit alcoves where mystic dancers move in slow, deliberate patterns, their hands tracing sigils in the air. Stone benches where whispering devotees share vials of perfumed oil, each scent crafted to heighten emotion. Rose for love, cedar for strength, lavender for dreamful peace. You trudge between alcoves, inhaling each aroma, letting the scents layer in your memory like chapters in a scent-bound diary. So often myth recasts wine simply as indulgence, yet here you feel its sacramental power to break barriers, forge bonds, and open glimpses of truths that slumber beneath the waking mind. You quip your third joke, best therapy session ever, and laughter ripples through the grove in gentle waves of camaraderie. Gradually, as if on cue, the music softens and the dancers slow, their breaths heavy but hearts alight. Torchlight dims to flickers, and the grove's cacophony fades into murmurs of contentment. Dionysus strides forward, cantharos raised, and offers a final toast to life's sweetness and its inevitable sting. You cup your hands, catching a last drop of wine that shimmers like captured starlight, and sip with reverent pleasure. As dawn's first pale glow seeps between the vines, the revelers part ways, each carrying a spark of the night's magic into morning's calm. You stand at the grove's threshold, tasting the festival's lingering warmth on your lips and feeling the gentle ache in your limbs, a holy soreness born of ecstatic dance. You carry the revel's sweet sting in your bones and the god's paradoxical gift of insight, that in letting go. We glimpse the deepest truths. You trudge away beneath trailing vines, petals drifting down like confetti to carpet your path. The silhouettes of statues fade behind you, consumed by new growth and morning light. Ahead lies Aphrodite's love entanglements, tales of desire and betrayal. But for now, you breathe in lingering jasmine and grape must, letting the last notes of Bacchic drums echo softly in your heart. You blink and find yourself drifting along a rose-petal-strewn path that winds through an orchard of blossoming myrtle and wild roses, their perfume thick enough to drift on the breeze like a silken veil. Here unfolds Aphrodite's love entanglements, an intricate web of desire, deception, and divine allure where hearts both mortal and immortal tangle in threads of beauty and betrayal. You trudge forward, each step releasing soft crunches of crushed petals beneath your feet. Mainstream myth tells us Aphrodite, born from sea foam and sky foam, rules love's inexorable pull, her power so great that even the mighty Zeus bends to her capricious whims. Mainstream fact. Yet beneath that radiant surface lie affairs that sparked wars and whispers of passions too volatile even for gods. A warm breeze carries the scent of salt, an echo of Aphrodite's oceanic birth, mingled with the heady sweetness of jasmine and orange blossom. You quip, best fragrance sampler on earth. Your first joke drifting gently in the perfumed air. Ahead, a trio of doves flutters between branches, their white wings dusted with gold pollen. In fringe cult worship, these birds were said to carry lovers' secret messages across mortal realms. Quirky tidbit. Scholars still argue whether dove imagery originated in Phoenician rites or was later Hellenized to fit Greek aesthetics. Scholarly debate. You trudge past a sparkling fountain carved with entwined figures, two couples locked in embrace, expressions of bliss and anguish etched into stone. You lean close, tracing the curves of sculpted limbs, and feel the cool spray mist your cheeks. The water tastes faintly of rosewater and sea salt, sensory notes that anchor you in both love's intoxication and its brackish undercurrents. Aphrodite emerges then, stepping from behind a curtain of ivy, her gown a cascade of pale pink and gold threads that shimmer with each movement. Her hair flows like molten sunrise, eyes bright as burnished amber. In her hand she holds a mirrored shell, an echo of her birth, its interior opal-toned and reflective of desire's fleeting nature. You quip under your breath, "Mirror, mirror, but can't you tell me if he's worth it?" Offering a light jab at heartbreak's universal uncertainty. She glides forward, and the orchard responds. Roses lean toward her, petals unfurling in slow salute, while myrtle branches bow like dancers in reverence. You inhale deeply, the mingled scent of rose, honey, and sea foam filling your senses. It's a sensory tapestry woven from Greek gardens and coastal breezes alike. Aphrodite's gaze settles on you, and she tilts her head, a gesture of both invitation and admonition. Love demands sacrifice, she intones softly, voice like a breath across satin. You nod, recalling tales of her own sacrifices in service of passion. You follow her to a shaded alcove where a marble bench invites you to sit. Beside you, she places a polished rose quartz heart. Legend holds that this stone, touched by her tears at Adonis's death, became the first token of love offered between mortals. Quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether rose quartz was valued in classical Greece or elevated in popularity during Hellenistic trade with Egypt. Scholarly debate. You run a fingertip across its smooth surface, feeling warmth seep into your palm. "Watch," Aphrodite whispers, plucking a single red rose and pressing its bloom to her lips. She exhales, and the petals glow with inner light before scattering like embers across the path. You quip your second joke, Guess Valentine's Day started here. And you both share a smile tinted with history's bittersweet irony. She rises and glides toward a tapestry hanging on a garden wall, a woven scene of Helen of Troy's face, the world's most beautiful woman, whose elopement sparked the Trojan War. You approach and study the fine threads. Helen's eyes alone consume 100 stitches of gold and crimson. Mainstream sources recount that Helen's beauty could launch 1,000 ships, each vessel sailing not for conquest, but for the promise of love's triumph. Mainstream fact. You swallow, tasting salt on your tongue, aware that love's spark can ignite the most devastating flames. Aphrodite rests a hand upon the tapestry, and it shimmers, scenes shifting to Paris's fateful choice between goddesses. You shiver as you watch Paris, mortal prince, award the golden apple to Aphrodite over Hera and Athena, swayed by promise of the world's fairest woman. A simple beauty contest with divine consequences, you murmur, feeling that ancient drama echo in mortal courtships today. She leads you onward, past a reflecting pool where water lilies float like pale moons. In its depths, you glimpse fleeting images, a married couple's embrace and then their silent tears, a young man's longing gaze across a crowded court, an immortal's fleeting dalliance with a mortal, followed by remorse. Each reflection pulses like a heartbeat. Sensory fragments of lives tangled by Aphrodite's touch. Love's gift and its curse, Aphrodite says, voice low. Hearts entwined can bind or break. You step carefully over stepping stones that ripple with each footfall, as if feeling your weight. The stones feel cool beneath your soles, each one etched with a lover's name long faded from memory. Suddenly, from the grove's edge, emerges Ares, god of war and Aphrodite's secret consort, his bronze armor catching dappled sunlight. He strides toward her, eyes dark with desire and pride. You quip softly. Now that's one complicated love triangle, earning a sidelong glance from the goddess and a curt nod from the god. Their clandestine passion, whispered among poets, defied even Olympus's rigid codes. Quirky tidbit. Scholars still argue whether their affair symbolized the union of love and strife, or simply catered to scandalous appetites in mythic storytelling. Scholarly debate. Aphrodite and Ares meet by the reflecting pool. He cups her face, and her cheeks flush, rose-petal hues blooming with affection. You sense the hushed hush of the orchard as their hands entwine, two forces entwined in a dance older than memory. A single petal drifts to the water's surface and spirals outward in concentric rings like a heartbeat in ripples. They part, and Aphrodite lays a hand on your shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. Remember, she murmurs, all love stories carry both sweetness and sorrow. You nod, tasting the orchard's lingering perfume and the soft ache of unspoken promises. As they walk away together, Ares' arm around her waist, her hand on his chest, their figures cast in golden light. You trudge back along the petal-strewn path. The orchard settles into quietude, petals drifting to carpet your way. Before you leave, you pause to pluck a lone rose and press it between pages of your memory. Its scent, a lasting reminder of love's entangling bloom. You trudge onward, heart heavy with both wonder and caution, carrying Aphrodite's dual mandate, to seek love's beautiful heights and to brace for its inevitable betrayals. Ahead lies the hero's mortal trials, Perseus, Heracles, and more, where love, lineage, and labor forge destinies. But for now, you breathe in the mingled scents of myrtle, rose, and sea foam, letting the lesson of love's exquisite peril guide each step toward the final wind down. You blink and find yourself standing on a rugged shore where waves lap like eager hands and the scent of brine mingles with sun-baked stone. Here begins the saga of heroes and mortal trials, an age when men born of gods and mortals alike faced labors that blurred the line between legend and reality. You trudge across a strand strewn with broken oars and battered shields, each fragment a testament to journeys both triumphant and tragic. Mainstream myth tells us Perseus, son of Zeus and Danae, slew Medusa to save his mother and win Andromeda's hand. Mainstream fact. Yet beyond that famed quest lies a mosaic of mortal courage, divine caprice, and the price paid for glory. Ahead, you spot the fallen Gorgon's head strapped to Perseus's leather breastplate, its petrified gaze hidden beneath a polished visor. You trudge toward him as he steps from the surf, wings from Hermes' sandals still wet with salt. The air tastes of iron and cold mist, sensory notes that echo the sting of battle and the chill of fate's turning wheel. You quip. Hope he polished that thing. Your first joke puncturing the solemnity like a silver arrow through night. Perseus adjusts his helm and recalls how Athena guided his reflection in a bronze shield to avoid Medusa's deadly eyes. A fringe detail whispers that he once practiced on wax dummies before the real hunt, an experimental tactic historians still debate as either practical training or later embellishment to humanize the hero. Scholarly debate. You inhale the salt breeze and taste a hint of olive oil from his journey's portion of provisions. He beckons you to follow as he strides toward a rocky promontory. There, Andromeda stands chained to a coral outcrop, seaweed twisting around her ankles and pearls glinting in her hair. You inhale the tang of algae and limestone. Sensing both her peril and perseverance, Perseus unbuckles the Gorgon's head, gazing at its closed eyes before raising it like a shield. You quip softly. Talk about a head-turner. Your second joke echoing off coral walls as Medusa's gaze crystallizes the sea monster sent to devour Andromeda, with a thunderclap of turning water and shattered stone. The beast stiffens in mid-roar before collapsing into petrified shards. You taste victory's sweetness, not honey, but the brackish triumph of overcoming monstrous fate. Andromeda's chains clatter to the rock, and she steps free, her hair brushing your cheek like sea foam. She presses a kiss to Perseus's cheek. Her gratitude is radiant as a sunrise reflected on calm waters. You trudge alongside the newlywed couple as they walk a path carved by clamshells and brittle starfish, symbols of rescue etched in every shingle. Perseus unwraps a scroll listing his tasks. More labors await, each bound by divine decree. You catch a glimpse of Danae's name faded at the bottom, a reminder that every quest ripples back to mortal hearts. You quip. Gotta love a to-do list that includes slaying sea monsters. And the hero laughs, his voice carrying over waves like a ringing bell. The scene shifts, and you find yourself in a grove where Heracles undertakes his labors, 12 feats of strength meant to atone for madness sent by Hera. The scent of goat's hair and wild thyme clings to his lion skin cloak. Mainstream myth tells us he wrestled the Nemean lion barehanded, its impenetrable hide a trial of raw power. Mainstream fact. You watch as he gently props the lion's carcass against a tree, careful to preserve its pelt. A quirky detail suggests local potters crafted urns depicting lion hunts for ritual commemoration, an artistic tradition scholars still argue reflects either mass commemoration of his victory or later heroic cult propaganda. Scholarly debate. You breathe in pine and smoke from sacrificial flames. Heracles turns to you, wiping sweat from his brow with a vine-twined cloth. Come, he says, beckoning across mossy stones. You follow as he leads you to a cavern where the Lernaean hydra writhes, heads hissing like vipers under flickering torchlight. The air tastes of sulfur and dread, each inhalation a jolt of primal fear. Heracles strikes one head, and 2 more sprout in its place. You quip. Multiplying problems. Classic. Your third joke offering a moment's levity in mythic horror. With help from Iolaus, your companion in arms, Heracles cauterizes each stump, preventing regrowth. The cavern fills with sizzling hisses and the smell of scorched earth. At last, only one immortal head remains, which he buries beneath a rock slab. You step backward as the echo of hissing fades, the cavern's darkness settling like a held breath. Heracles dips his club in a bubbling spring, a healing salve against Hydra's poison. You taste the water's mineral sharpness and feel it calm your quaking limbs. As you emerge from the cave, the grove brightens in sunrise. Birds trill in celebration, their songs weaving through lingering mist. Heracles lifts his club and nods, the weight of his penance lightened by victory and sorrow's lesson. You trudge onward as he straps the lion's pelt across his back, a cloak of both victory and grief. For each labor cost as much as it gained. Beyond Heracles' grove, you glimpse Atalanta, swift huntress among heroes, racing across fields chasing a golden boar's shadow. Her laughter rings like wind chimes, her feet stirring dust into sunlit halos. You smile, realizing every hero's journey echoes themes you've already walked: divine favor, mortal courage, and the caprice of fate. At the path's end stands a grand arch of carved stone, reliefs depicting each hero's feat: the golden apples of the Hesperides, the capture of Cerberus, and the cleansing of Augean stables. You trudge through the arch, each relief whispering tales you've lived, as sea's salt, forest's fragrance, and battlefield's iron coalesce into a final sensory mosaic. Above the arch, carved letters read, "Labors of mortals, shadows of gods." You run a hand over the inscription, feeling the grooves carved by ancient chisels. The stone feels warm under your palm, heated by memory and myth alike. You quip softly, "Last checkpoint unlocked," and step beyond into open air. Ahead, the world expands, a horizon where your journey began in primordial void and now draws to close. You trudge forward, heart brimming with tales of creation, rebellion, love, and heroism. Each footfall carries the weight of millennia of stories, woven into the tapestry of your mythic odyssey. Now, as the echoes of divine footsteps fade, you settle into a space where time itself seems to pause. Let the rhythms of deep breathing guide you. Inhale slowly through your nose, feeling air cool against your nostrils. Then exhale gently through parted lips, releasing any lingering tension. Allow each breath to ground you here and now. The whisper of wind against ancient stones, the faint scent of olive and sea, the soft hum of distant laughter. Imagine the vast tapestry of myths you've traversed unfurling above like a star-strewn sky. Each tale a glowing constellation. With every exhale, let one of those constellations drift softly from view, its light dimming into welcoming darkness. No loss, only gentle fading. Feel your limbs grow heavier, your heartbeat slowing to a tender lullaby as the boundaries between waking and dreaming blur. In this hush, know that every god, every hero, every whispered myth belongs to you now, a gentle inheritance to carry with you into sleep. Allow the soft imagery of cosmic dawns, moonlit hunts, and oceanic depths to swirl together, weaving a dreamscape as boundless as the night sky. With your final, quiet breath, surrender to the comfort of myth's embrace. Float on the undulating currents of legend, and drift into a restful dream where you stand always on the shores of imagination. Ready for the next adventure. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.